Polymarket, the crypto-based predictions market, is essentially taking action on whether or not these sex toys will be thrown onto the court during certain games. Yes, you heard me right. Polymarket has launched a new betting market on dildo tossing. There are so many wrongs here, piled into a single dildo, which coincidentally is penis-shaped, just like Clay Travis's head, that I don't even have the emotional energy to deal with all of it right now. Norman Chad. Norman Chad. Welcome to Gambling Mad with Norman Chad. I am Norman Chad. Coming up on the program today, Donald Trump is the new sheriff of D.C. Dildos are the new scourge of the sports betting scene. And Atlantic City is the old and new smoking capital of the world. Gambling Mad, as always, brought to you by Fritos, picked fresh off of Central California trees every morning, delivered directly to your local retailer every afternoon. And by the refreshing taste of Fresca. Fritos and Fresca. It's a meal. Donald Trump's having a big month, and I mean a bigly month. Let's just take a look at what he's been doing. He fired the old statistics person and hired a new statistics person to give him better statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He is trying to extort a $1 billion settlement from UCLA after freezing $584 million in government funding from the university. This is very similar to how he pays for his porn star sex. He announced a $200 million project to convert the White House Rose Garden into the Rose Patio, which may or may not include slot machines. He announced more tariffs that he may or may not impose on nations he may or may not know. He killed public broadcasting, and he transferred Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison that resembles Melrose Place. He will be hosting the Kennedy Center Honors, not because he wanted to, he said, but because he was invited to do so. And, of course, he added Sheriff of Washington, D.C. to his President of the United States responsibilities, marching out his own personal military force to eliminate crime in the nation's capital by sundown tomorrow. He now has sent in the National Guard to the only two places I've ever lived, Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and I'm starting to take it a little bit personally. So we're told we are facing emergency conditions in Washington, D.C., crime rise. Is this true? Well, I checked with local police sources in my hometown, and they produced this data for me. This is updated through the beginning of June this year. This is the crime statistics. This is the District of Columbia. And as you see, in most of the district, crime figures are down 16%, 13%, 8% here. Wards 4 and 5 doing well, if you know the wards there. Ward 8 is doing pretty well. The only area of the District of Columbia in which crime is up is literally the White House itself. The White House itself, alone with Donald Trump, crime is up 74% from the previous occupant. We're talking 34 counts, felony counts, that he was convicted on. That makes him a convicted felon. He's twice impeached. He has 50 or 60 other criminal charges against him that are pending or have been tabled or have been shoved under the rug. So again, in general, crime in Washington down, except for 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Every week, it seems, I bring you another crack in the facade of gambling. Will sports in America survive this avalanche of legal gambling activity that we're now seeing? Probably. Will there be a tipping point of some sort? Maybe. Well, today we're going to talk about prop bets, in particular player-specific prop bets. These are bets on what an individual player may do during a game. They are called micro bets. The information I'm going to bring you in this report comes largely from an article from the fabulous David Purdom on ESPN.com. The Ohio Casino Control Commission is considering disallowing certain player-specific bets. This is likely in response to MLB's sports betting investigation involving two Cleveland Guardians pitchers, Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase. Both players were put on non-disciplinary paid leave last month as part of MLB's gambling probe. There had been some unusual betting activity, for instance, on the first pitch by Ortiz in several innings of two games in the month of June. So I think the Ohio Commission has the right idea, taking a closer look at this. It's bad enough that already you can bet on different NBA player totals during a game, how many rebounds he's going to have, how many turnovers he's going to have. You can bet on a pitcher's total strikeouts during a game. And, we've even seen an NBA player suspended, Jonte Porter, because of his questionable activity in regard to those type of prop bets. However, this first pitch business is potentially even more suspect and explosive. With certain sports books, you can bet on whether, say, the first pitch of the third inning will be a ball or a strike. One pitch. Can this lead to nefarious activity? Is the Pope a Catholic Chicago White Sox fan? This doesn't involve a pitcher throwing a game and affecting a result. It involves a single pitch. Big bettors, they might approach a pitcher with a sweetheart deal. Just make sure you throw a ball on the game's first pitch, and we'll send you XXX dollars. These micro bets are just ripe for exploitation. We have talked about here before at Gambling Mad that college athletes in particular, very young, very underpaid, are susceptible to being approached by gambling syndicates on a prop bet. Hey, if someone came up to me a day before the show and said all I had to do was use the word photosynthesis in the first 90 seconds of Gambling Mad to earn $100,000, how fast do you think I'd be practicing saying photosynthesis in front of my mirror? Pretty fast. Now, this brings us, unfortunately, to dildos. Recently, we passed along an item to you all about a green sex toy being thrown onto the court during a WNBA game. I thought this was a one-off. Of course, it was not. So now multiple dildos have been tossed out onto the court during WNBA games. This repeated, somewhat reprehensible action has been egged on by certain individuals in the media, most notably media provocateur Clay Travis, for reasons unknown to anyone but Clay Travis. Now, for those of you not familiar with Clay Travis, aka Clay Travesty, he's a failed lawyer, failed sports writer, failed sports prognosticator, failed TV personality, and failed human being. But these days, he runs a somewhat popular, odious Outkick website, and he co-hosts a daily talk radio program that sets radio back 150 years or before radio was even invented. So now, according to Clay Travis, it's become cool. It's a real bro thing to encourage the dildos to be thrown onto the court, to actually throw those green sex toys onto the court. Now, forget the fact that turds like Travis are trying to mobilize something that is clearly stupid and can be dangerous. I haven't even gotten to the bad news yet, the really bad news, which takes us back to gambling. Polymarket, the crypto-based predictions market, is essentially taking action on whether or not these sex toys will be thrown onto the court during certain games. Yes, you heard me right. Polymarket has launched a new betting market on dildo tossing. There are so many wrongs here, piled into a single dildo, which coincidentally is penis-shaped, just like Clay Travis's head, that I don't even have the emotional energy to deal with all of it right now. But the latest wrong, that Polymarket allows financial activity on action that can clearly be manipulated, is pretty damning all by itself. We are all We are all going to hell in a handbasket, and Polymarket likely has an over-under on the exact date that you can bet on. Polymarket these days is taking all types of action now on real-life things happening. And real-life bad actors could influence all sorts of outcomes to benefit financially on the market. So for instance, let's say you could put money, this is a hypothetical, let's say you could put money on whether someone will throw Clay Travis's body in front of a bull during the running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain before 2028. I might invest $250,000 on the yes side of that equation, believing it's going to happen. And then I might spend maybe $25,000 somehow inducing Clay Travis onto a plane, fly to Spain with him, and then ask a local to throw his brain-dead body in front of a bull during the running of the bulls. What a payday for me. These are dark times, my friend, no matter how much sun is shining. I spend a good deal of my professional time in casinos. This tells me two things. One, I made a bad choice of professions. Two, I have absorbed so much secondhand smoke, I should build a chimney up my ass. How is it possible that Las Vegas and Atlantic City casinos still allow smoking in most of their gaming areas? Nearly 20 years ago, both Nevada and New Jersey passed indoor smoking laws with exceptions carved out for casinos. And indeed, it feels as if casinos are the last big outpost in America where smoking is expected and accepted. And, I got to tell you, I know a lot of smokers. I am sympathetic to those who end up smoking cigarettes. Nicotine is a tough habit to kick. But if you want to smoke, go right ahead. Just do it in the privacy of your own home or somewhere where you're not blowing smoke into someone else's face. For a moment here, let's just center on Atlantic City, where I spent my early casino days before someone tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to Las Vegas on a map. Atlantic City is a tough town to play in. It is even a tougher town to work in. There's a group there called CEASE, Casino Employees Against Smoking Effects, that's been fighting for years to make Atlantic City casinos smoke-free. It's always hard to beat the House, and in this case, the House has thrown all its money behind smoking. You've got to feel for the Atlantic City casino workforce. Atlantic City might be the worst place for employment in the Western world, with the possible exception of Buckingham Palace. Yeah, Buckingham Palace. Those royals work you to the bone, and then they just wave to the crowds from their balconies. Anyway, working in an Atlantic City casino is joyless. Bad hours, bad pay, customers in a bad mood, supervisors with a bad attitude. And on top of all that, you got to stand there all day long and absorb cigarette and cigar fumes. Forcing anyone to earn a living in a workplace in which you suck up secondhand smoke every hour of every day is unacceptable by any reasonable standard in 2025. And last I checked, this is 2025, at least until the end of the year. Now, speaking of the whole smoking, non-smoking business, I get a kick when I think back to a hilarious small step in the right direction that some casinos in Las Vegas did several years ago. At certain blackjack tables, they would designate the two end seats, which we call first base and third base, as non-smoking areas. So let's say there's 6 seats at most blackjack tables. Seats 1 and 6 would be no smoking. Seats 2, 3, 4, and 5 were allowed to smoke. Okay, casino executive Einsteins, where does the smoke from seats 2, 3, 4, and 5 go? Nowhere near seats 1 and 6? Thankfully, someone in the casino hierarchy came along and said, okay, why don't we make like an entire blackjack table non-smoking? Genius! Now, this also reminds me back in the days when smoking was still allowed on airline flights. And then we evolved to the position that there would be a non-smoking section of the aircraft and a non-smoking section. So they would divide it up, like rows 1 to 13, a 1 to 12 would be smoking, rows 13 to 24 would be non-smoking. Now, if you're in row 13 or 14, I'm not sure you were getting the best non-smoking experience. Your safest bet, frankly, was to spend the entire flight in the bathroom in the rear of the aircraft. But then if you did that, you'd miss, food and beverage service. But we are evolving. Smoke-free is coming to just about everywhere sooner or later, including casinos. A lot of my adolescence was defined by dog shows. A lot of my adult life is defined by poker tournaments. Have these two facts fouled me up? They surely have. What I have determined is that dog show owners and poker players are two of the most insulated, myopic, narrow-focused groups I've ever been around. Let's start with the dog shows. I went to about 100 of them when I was growing up. My father decided to show our Siberian Husky, named Tuffy the Snow Prince, at these various dog shows. Now, the dog show subgroup is easy to describe in one quick word: odd. And I'm going to save some of my breath and simply direct all of you to the 2000 film, the 2000 mockumentary, Best in Show, written by Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy. Just a brilliant, funny depiction of dog owner mentality, of dog owners who go to dog shows. My strongest memories, I was just a kid, of the dog shows were hearing a voice over the public address system that announced, "Clean up man to ring 4, clean up man to ring 4. Pooping in the ring is like a horse throwing his jockey. Race is over. There's no coming back from defecating during a dog show. And that always made for a very long ride home. And it always was a long ride home because it wasn't like dog shows were being held 10 minutes from your house every weekend. We had to go pretty far to go join some of the most pretty and usual people you're ever going to find weekend after weekend. The key thing to remember here is that to a dog owner, prepping for a dog show or being at the dog show, that's all that matters in the world at that moment. Everything else is trivial. And this is precisely what the dog owners who frequent dog shows have in common with poker players who frequent poker tournament series. The World Series of Poker every summer in Las Vegas is the most extreme example of this. For 6 or 7 weeks, poker players only care about poker results. They're like rats in a maze seeking the best hands and the best results. And, remember, casinos in general, they're famous for having no windows anywhere. There's no clocks anywhere. Players at the World Series of Poker are virtually shut out from the real world. Russian troops could invade Chicago in early June, and poker players at the World Series of Poker would not be aware of this until mid-July when they finally step outside. It is a singular pursuit of poker, and their minds process nothing else. One of the players I loved, one of the players I knew best, the late, great Miami John Cernuto. Several years back, he had a serious health program, serious health problem that took him out of the card room for a year or two. And then when he finally returned to poker, I'll always remember seeing him at the World Series of Poker in the card room for the first time in more than a year. My eyes lit up as we approached each other. We hugged, and then I said, "Miami, how are you doing?" And he responded, "I just had pocket kings, and this kid with 9-7 offsuit cracked me and beat me in the hand." "No, Miami," I said, "how are you feeling?" He'd had serious heart condition, but that's how these poker players are wired. Talking and thinking and breathing and complaining about poker hands every moment of every day. On this subject, I will leave you with an old standard joke. What's the difference between a puppy and a poker player? Eventually, the puppy stops whining. Bed Bath & Beyond declared bankruptcy 2 years ago and shuttered its 300 stores. It is now back under a brand new name. What was Bed Bath & Beyond will now be known as Bed Bath & Beyond Home. You heard me right. It used to be Bed Bath & Beyond. It now, going forward, will be Bed Bath & Beyond Home. This rebranding reminds me of Charles Manson back in the 1970s, trying to remarket himself as Charles Manson Gandhi. The first Bed Bath & Beyond Home just opened in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm telling you, this name change, it's going to be a game changer. Previously, I never went to Bed Bath & Beyond because I thought the beds and baths and beyonds were for an office or maybe a construction site. But now, as Bed Bath & Beyond Home, it is abundantly clear to me that the beds and baths and beyonds are for home, and I have a home. I will be there with bells on when the first Bed Bath & Beyond Home opens up in the Los Angeles area. And I hope they have samples, like Costco. Before we wrap up, I am going to say this one time and one time only. Mobland, streaming on Paramount Plus, is spectacular TV. First, let me say I stopped watching television pretty much after The Sopranos concluded in 2007. That means for the last 18 years, I've been listening to talk radio, which has turned my mind to mush, which eventually ended my career and made me turn to nonprofit podcasting. Mobland is a British crime drama. Don't be turned off by the fact that it is British. It's not this Downton Abbey aristocratic period shit. It's a current day mob family fighting for its life. Is it violent? Sure, it's violent. But we live in America. So we've been preparing our whole lives for this, The writing is sublime. The stories are terrific. The acting is spot on if you can stand Pierce Brosnan chewing up the scenery here and there. Maybe you don't want to give Paramount Plus any of your money. I understand that. So either just subscribe to it for a month for $10 or so and then drop it, or even better, get a 1-week free trial and binge all 10 episodes of season 1. That's about an episode a day, with a couple of matinees thrown in. And the best thing about Mobland, it pairs perfectly with Fritos and Fresca. That will do it for another episode of Gambling Mad with Norman Chad. Hope to see you again next time. And remember, if you're going to roll the dice, make sure they are loaded. Have you noticed that road rage is in vogue again? When I drive to church Sunday mornings, the trip doesn't seem complete unless 2 other motorists have flipped me the bird. People are angry out there. Everyone is stressed or frustrated about something. Traffic has gotten worse. The roads themselves are badly in need of repair. If I accidentally cut someone off, they might tailgate me for the next 5 miles. I no longer look in the rearview mirror because I'm scared to see what's behind me. Well, I've got a solution to this madness that you all aren't going to like. The bus. Get out of your cars and get onto the bus. Yeah, the city bus. Get onto the bus. Take the bus. Ride the bus, embrace the bus, seize the bus. You shall know the bus, and the bus shall set you free. And if the commuter minions of wretched, huddled masses yearning to breathe free don't join me in boarding the bus, as Ralph Cramden is my witness, I will go gambling mad.
Gambling Mad with Norman Chad is written by Norman Chad and ghost-written by Norman Chad. Executive producers are John Scheinberg and Rick Barrio-Dill. Produced by Norman Chad and Rick Barrio-Dill. Our associate producers are Bree Khoury and Asher Friedberg, and edited by Asher Friedberg with studio facilities at 360 Pod Studios, Beverly Hills.